appreciate the efforts in the recent patch. However, as a level 38 player, mobs in the 20-22 range now both award XP and attack on sight. I agree with the intent of the change, but I think it was overdone. I believe slightly narrowing, or to use your words, dial back the level ranges that reward experience could help do exactly what you intended while relieving some frustration of traveling around the world. Maybe. I would definitely categorize this as a change that was absolutely intended, planned, but also I would put it in the category as something that we may iterate on as time goes on, and we kind of are able to get more clarity on how it's working and the kind of effects that it's having. And that could be, you know, potentially adjusting the level range. It could also be adjusting like the aggro radius and the aggro range of lower con NPCs if we feel like it's something that we need to address. So it's good feedback, but you know, we're definitely still taking things in. So the idea that gray mobs are aggroing much easier. Let's test this for a second, because if that's the case, I would say that would be an unintended side effect. And the goal with that was that gray NPCs would have an extremely small aggro radius. They could still aggro you if you were like right on top of them, but it would shrink down to essentially requiring you to be almost right on top of them to do so. So, I mean, that's definitely very heavily reduced for sure. But it does seem like it's not quite as reduced as it was at one time. So it does seem like something has changed there a little bit. It's not quite as tight of a circle as it was. But what I will commit to doing is looking at it. Because what I am wanting to know is if something changed. It seems like something changed. I hear you guys saying, who play this game more than I do, that something is different. So I want to see if something has in fact changed, and then we can make a go from there. I'll have some more to say about perception soon. But what I can say is, with D. Schlau and JN back and kicking, yeah, I expect there to be some more for me to share on that front soon. So, okay, great. That's a great question, Chris. Writing an Enchanter, my main guide for the Discord. What's your take on the DPS parser that's in the wild and mods in general? I'm on the fence about adding this to the guide. My stance, and I would say just generally speaking as a team, with something like the parser, we've not made an official statement or had an official stance on that. So my advice, my response is always going to be use it at your own risk, in the sense of like it you know, verify where it's coming from, you know, make sure that it's not sanctioned by us, in the sense that it's not made by us. We can't say anything about the safety of using it or anything like that. So just use the same care that you use with anything of that nature. But we haven't come out and said you can't use this. So for the parser, so I'm not gonna say that you shouldn't use it or anything like that. We don't provide, right now anyway, we don't provide parsers like you see on mine. You see here the recap of the fight with the small brown rat, where you see how much damage I did, how much healing, and things like that. We don't provide that in the client because we don't want to necessarily promote the kind of gameplay that goes along with that, sometimes the kind of community response that can happen. But at the same time, like, parsers are going to exist, and we're just not at a point where we're ready to say, like, you know, we hereby decree that you cannot use parsers or anything like that. Mods is a little bit of a different story, because mods can start to fundamentally change the way the game is played depending on what it is. And of course, you know, there's a whole rabbit trail you can go down there of like what mods and how they work and all that. So I'm definitely not going to comment on any mod stuff other than to say, like, if you're doing something that fundamentally changes the way the game works, like, be aware that that could result in action depending on what it is. But I hesitate to say anything because I don't have any specific ones in mind. I'm sure there's many I'm not aware of. So that's all I'll say on that. Range click targeting in Pantheon sucks. I'm just gonna say it. Like, it sucks. It drives me crazy. When I'm trying to target a player that's running by on my screen, it's like, what? Like, it's not, I can't. I can't target this person because I can't click on them. So yeah, I feel you on that. We need to, there's a couple of things that contribute to that. The targeting detection at range when something's moving, especially, and you can see, like, on these NPCs, they have a much more kind of, it's, the other thing that's kind of weird about it with our game right now is that there's a delay. So if you can tell, if I click on this and then I deselect it and then try to immediately click on it again, it doesn't do it right away. There's a built-in delay even with hovering. You see how even if I click off of it and I try to hover and it doesn't change? That, I think, also contributes to some of the unresponsiveness. The feeling of unresponsiveness, in addition to just the actual, like, click detection. So it's a thing. It's a thing. It's one of the things that I would call out and say, yeah, it's really annoying. The hairstyle updates would be cool. Take a look at those. This is for the human female. So goal obviously is to just build in a lot more variety into the different hairstyles that are available, to do that with, you know, not only the human, male, female, but the other races as well. This will over time coincide with getting in, like, skin color options and even some different facial presets and things like that. So the goal right now, kind of the name of the game right now is let's get some variety in play, because variety is going to allow us to create some sense of like a progressional element to these outfits. And so even though the mesh is the same, the difference in coloration, the variety in color, the variety of like ornamentation and things like that allows us to create higher level versions of robes and various things like that. We've got our ogre in here. We've got it, you know, fitted out for the ogre as well as the dwarf. So this is going to be really nice to get in. Really nice to get in. I know we're working on the new Wildblood models and getting those ready to go. I can't say just yet when those will be coming in or when to expect those, but those are being worked on. And those will be like totally different, you know, the non-human kind of temporary variety that we've got in right now. And same with the Golden Fang. The Golden Fangs in Silent Plains as well. In area in Silent Plains. Not gonna say a whole lot about it just yet, but let's just say we plan on quite a few extensions to the trenches that are in there, as well as kind of that dungeon area that you guys have seen the first little bits of. Got some invisible walls keeping you from going too far in there, but those trenches getting built out quite a bit and being able to go underground and having some like rooms and offshoots and things like that. Yeah, so next class on the list is the Cleric. I feel like while the Cleric is in a good place when it comes to their efficiency and their performance, how well they can do what they do in a group, I think they're in a relatively good place. They're a good healer. But I think the Cleric it needs the same treatment. It needs more of their kit filled out. It needs a few other like flavor type abilities, but they aren't just flavor. They're there and they're meaningful. I want to really focus, as I'm working through the Cleric, I want to really focus on their play style and like how they feel to play. One of the things that I would like to see with the Cleric as well is a little bit more stun, presence of like a stun. I guess a stun line that can be part of helping them build in that kind of that space a little bit to kind of slow things down for a second if they need to kind of get their footing. Invigorate will have a whole group version. Invigorate will follow the same approach that the changes to the Shaman spells got, which is once a spell upgrade hits post level 30, it will hit as a group buff version, like a single target or a group buff version. This is also a big one, and it's meant to be. So the Writ of Refreshing, the line that increases readiness regeneration or readiness generation. That's another really big one for clerics that right now, again, they only have one rank of it. And we need to reevaluate whether this rank, like this first rank, is potent enough. And the idea is to not have them overlap too much with other classes. So since Shaman already have, for example, a strength and stamina buff, I don't really want to see clerics having strength or stamina buffs. That kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, con dex is definitely on the table. And to be honest, it doesn't mean that they may get an attribute buff either. Like, it's just something that I think that's important to make clear too. I'm not saying that they need one or have to have one or anything like that. It's just part of the consideration. Shielding is the beard and butter. I like that. The beard and butter. Group shielding is a big part of what I want clerics to grow into. I do want, hopefully in the relatively near to mid future, I want to really, pinpoint a few of their iconic abilities, like really iconic abilities. Like for Cleric, for example, that Celestial Aegis, that massive like celestial shield that you can summon and pick up and physically place in an area to block off NPC pathing that NPCs have to like fight through to break it down to get to the group. And then other, iconic abilities for the other classes. I really want to get to that as soon as possible. And yeah, my goal is to try to move pretty quick. There was an oversight on the Sting of the Great Scorpion ability. I don't think that made it into the vendors just yet, which is unfortunate, but that's fixed now. Let's see. Oh, the Reptilian Veil line. Got that one in as well. These are things that'll be coming in whenever the next big patch is. Was it intended to remove Shaman's pet attacks? Yes, it was. But here's the key. Shaman pets were overtuned when I finished the pass that I just did. They were too strong. So we've toned that way back, and part of toning that way back is removing some of the abilities that Shaman pets get that they were getting right off the rip. So now I think it's the first 3 tiers of the pet is just auto attack, or that's how it was. And then originally it was they got Chomp and Mangle right off the rip. Then we dialed it back to where they were just auto attack, and then they got Chomp later, and then they got Mangle eventually, and then now the most recent pass we did, we just removed the abilities altogether because Shaman are not DPS classes. The pets are not meant to be, chunking damage. And so yeah, we did make the decision ultimately to remove those 2 abilities and have them, at least at the moment, that's kind of the direction we're taking, is to have them be just auto attack. But they do get dual wield. I think at level 25, I believe. Para the Touch, you'd previously last month mentioned about the monk being worked on and bringing new gates. Has that work been put aside for now, or just taking a while? it's taking a while because that specifically requires programming, like a programmer, namely Kyle, to kind of build out the support we need to do what we want to do with the gates. So it's not like it's sitting there just waiting for me to work on it. I'm waiting for the right resource to be available to work on that. .reaggro. Yeah, we'll see again. Not solving the .reaggro conundrum by, clearing dots when you feign death or things like that does set us up to, make sure that things like cures and cleanses and dispels and things like that are meaningful. There are several aspects of feign death that are not dialed in yet, and some of them are cases where we still need to make some decisions, and I would like to do that as part of the monk pass when we get there. Yes, the longbow, shortbow, arrow, ranged combat itemization, things like that is known. Improving that itemization wise is definitely on the list. Antidexter says, hey Joppa, can you elaborate on how the split stats scale for wizard spells? Is there a difference in which stat scales more if it reads intelligence con versus con intelligence? Would it ever make sense to change out 3 intelligence for 3 con, or would the scaling be better going full end? I think what we're going to do is normalize the stat contributions on ability modifiers. And what I mean by that is, like, when you have an ability, like you see here, healing modifiers, wisdom, con, that we're going to normalize those, meaning that they're going to share the same amount of contribution, and that contribution is going to be consistent from ability to ability. So it could be something like 25% of or 33% of that stat. So what I'm saying is, moving forward, yeah, when you see ability modifiers or some kind of a modifier on ability, assume that they are of equal weight, and know that the intent is for them to be equal weight. And then if you feel like that's not the case in game from your testing or what you're experiencing, know that it's probably awaiting a pass to fix that. Hopefully that was clear. One of the things that Mark and I have been talking through, and Mark actually kind of presented the idea, is the way that we handle Undeath in this game. I think the world of Terminus, the history of Terminus, is a really good foundation for Undeath to have a lot of depth to it. And part of that is by making Undeath something more formidable for players in general to deal with. But it also allows us to lean into the strength of some of those verse Undead classes more so than we are right now. I mean, in the lore of Pantheon, Paladins are actually the more anti-undead focused class than Clerics are. It's just kind of a little tweak, like Clerics definitely are, but Paladins, the reason they become Paladins and left the Cleric Order is because they are so absolutely sold on this idea of wreaking like righteous vengeance on Undeath, and so much so that they've forsaken like some of the constraints of the Cleric Order and have become kind of that vigilante against Undeath in general. So Paladins take it to an even further degree. But what I was going to say next is, as you guys learn more about the lore of this place, you guys learn more about the lore of Aganoct and what's going on in here, it makes those sounds and like some of the ambience and stuff all that much creepier. The bankers are in front of the desks now. What? You jest. You jest. Nope, you're not jesting. They are indeed. Yes, of course. Of course they are. That's strangely aggressive for bankers, in my opinion. It's a little aggressive.